You already know this flag is controversial, but what if I told you it wasn't even the official flag of the Confederacy? And what most people don't realize is that it was hijacked, decades after the Civil War, by groups that wanted to send a very different message. The Confederate battle flag, commonly mistaken with the national flag of the Confederacy, was originally used by Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia during the American Civil War. It was a military standard designed to distinguish Confederate troops on the battlefield. Decades after the war, the flag was revived, not as a symbol of military history, but as a political statement. In the 20th century, it became widely associated with resistance to civil rights legislation and was prominently used by segregationists and white supremacist groups. Today, many defenders claim the flag just represents Southern heritage or rebellion, but that point is often overlooked with its long history as a symbol of racial oppression. It has appeared at hate rallies, on government buildings, and even in modern extremist events, adding fuel to the controversial fire. Although it wasn't originally created as an exclusively racist symbol per se, the way it has been used since the mid-20th century has heavily reshaped its public meaning, especially outside the American South. The Christian cross is one of the most widely recognized religious symbols in the world. It represents the crucifixion of Jesus and is meant to symbolize sacrifice, redemption, and salvation. Early Christians used it as a mark of faith and solidarity, often in secret during Roman persecution. Over time, though, the cross has been used in contexts that stray far from those original meanings. During the Crusades, it was worn by Christian knights waging military campaigns against Muslims, Jews, and even fellow Christians. In those cases, the cross became a justification for conquest. More recently, the Ku Klux Klan in the United States adopted the burning cross as a tool of racial intimidation. That was never part of traditional Christian practice, but the Klan used it to falsely claim moral authority while carrying out violence and terror. So while the cross still is a sacred symbol to many, historically there are groups who have hijacked this symbol in campaigns of violence and supremacy. The swastika was once a symbol of good fortune, used across Asia for thousands of years. Then the Nazis turned it into something different, and one of the clearest examples of a hijacked symbol in history. It originally comes from ancient Indian religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, where it symbolizes good fortune, well-being, and the cyclical nature of life. The word itself comes from the Sanskrit svastika, meaning conducive to well-being. Variations of the swastika also appeared in Native American, East Asian, and even early European cultures as a peaceful or cosmic symbol. But that all changed in the early 1900s, when the Nazi Party in Germany adopted a tilted version of the swastika, what they called the Hakenkreuz, or Hooked Cross, as part of their party emblem. They claimed it represented the so-called Aryan race and German national identity. This version was used aggressively in Nazi propaganda, military insignia, and on the national flag during Hitler's rule. Because of that, the swastika is now widely recognized in the West as a symbol of hate and genocide. It's even banned in countries like Germany and Austria, with exceptions for religious or educational use. The fasces originated in ancient Rome as a symbol of magisterial power, literally a bundle of wooden rods tied around an axe. It stood for authority and unity through law. The rods represented collective strength, and the axe symbolized the power to enforce order. Roman officials carried fasces during public appearances, and the symbol endured in Western political imagery for centuries. In the United States, it appeared on government buildings, coins, and even inside the House of Representatives. It was intended to signal Republican values and lawful governance. But in the 20th century, Benito Mussolini's fascist party in Italy adopted the fasces as a symbol of centralized, authoritarian control. It became a visual shorthand for state power, nationalism, and military aggression. In fact, that use of the fasces gave rise to the term fascism itself. Although the fasces is still used in American iconography, its association with Mussolini's regime complicates its meaning. It's one of those symbols that predates fascism, but is now partially defined by it. The eagle has been a political symbol for thousands of years, usually representing strength, sovereignty, and empire. It was most famously used in ancient Rome, where the aquila, or imperial eagle, stood at the center of Roman military standards. After the fall of Rome, the eagle continued to appear in various state emblems, most notably the double-headed eagle used by the Holy Roman Empire and later by Russia. In modern history, several major powers have claimed the eagle, often as a symbol of nationalism or military power. Nazi Germany adopted a stylized eagle, called the Reichsadler, as part of its state insignia. The United States also features the bald eagle as its national emblem, meant to convey liberty and independence. While the eagle generally signals power, its meaning changes with the regime using it. In some cases, it represents democratic ideals. In others, imperial control or authoritarian strength. The same bird has flown on both fascist and democratic banners, which complicates its interpretation. Maybe it's just a cool-looking bird that everybody wants to use. The peace sign was created in 1958 by British designer Gerald Holtham for the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. It's based on semaphore signals for the letters N and D, standing for nuclear disarmament. The design quickly spread beyond that movement, becoming a broader symbol of peace, anti-war activism, and counterculture resistance, especially during the 1960s. But then its meaning began to shift again. As the symbol gained popularity, it began appearing in contexts that had little or nothing to do with its original meaning, nuclear disarmament. It was picked up by fashion brands, lifestyle products, and pop culture in general. Today, it shows up on everything from jewelry to home decor, usually without reference to nuclear weapons or protest. In some fringe cases, anti-peace groups have mocked or distorted the symbol, portraying it as a sign of weakness or defeat. While those uses aren't widespread, they do show how the peace sign has drifted from its original roots of nuclear disarmament to a more generalized peace movement, often in a vague or commercialized way. The Ankh comes from ancient Egypt and is one of the oldest known symbols of life. Often held by deities in tomb paintings and carvings, it represents not just physical life, but eternal or divine life. The loop at the top was often interpreted as symbolizing the sun or eternity, and the entire symbol became closely tied to Egyptian religious practice and royal power. In modern times, the Ankh has taken on a very different life. It became popular in Western fashion, especially in goth, new age, and occult circles. Some people wear it as a general spiritual symbol, often without knowing its cultural origins. Some associate it with mysticism, magic, or even supernatural powers, meanings that aren't grounded in Egyptian belief. Its use in media and fashion has also contributed to this shift. From comic books to music videos, the Ankh is now often a visual motif rather than a sacred icon. While not maliciously hijacked, the Ankh's meaning has been significantly reinterpreted, often disconnected from its historical and religious origins. The Eye of Providence, or the all-seeing eye, is most often recognized today from the US $1 bill, an eye inside a triangle floating above a pyramid. Its roots go back pretty far. It was originally a Christian and later Masonic symbol, representing divine oversight and enlightenment. In those traditions, the eye was meant to symbolize a just and watchful God. Its meaning changed once it became a political icon. The US adopted it in the 18th century as part of its national seal, linking the new republic to ideals of destiny and higher guidance. But in the 20th and 21st centuries, conspiracy theorists reinterpret the symbol as a mark of secret societies or even occult influence. Because of this, the Eye of Providence is now widely tied to theories about the Illuminati and global surveillance, despite its religious and philosophical origins. The Yin-Yang is a core symbol in Taoist philosophy, representing balance between opposites, light and dark, active and passive, order and chaos. Its earliest known appearances as a symbol date to around the 3rd century BC in ancient China, where it helped explain how seemingly opposing forces are interconnected and interdependent. In the West, especially in the late 20th century, the Yin-Yang has been adopted into commercial design, pop culture, and fashion. You'll see it on t-shirts, tattoos, jewelry, and meditation products. While it's often still associated with peace or harmony, these interpretations are usually vague or disconnected from its philosophical roots. More a dilution than a straight-up aggressive hijack, the symbol's deep cosmological meaning has been flattened into a decorative or feel-good image. The skull and crossbones symbol originally had a religious function. It appeared on Christian graves as a memento mori, a visual reminder of death's inevitability and the need for spiritual reflection. It wasn't so much threatening as it was contemplative. That changed in the early 18th century, when pirates began using it on their flags. Known as the Jolly Roger, it signaled aggression, lawlessness, and a warning to surrender or be attacked. The skull and crossbones evolved again in the 19th century, when it began appearing on poison bottles to mark toxicity and danger. In modern times, it's occasionally become a symbol of rebellion in subcultures like punk, metal, and biker communities. It shows up in everything from cartoons to military patches to snack packaging. Its original meaning, a humble reminder of the universality of our inevitable fate, is mostly forgotten. Instead, it's now mainly a symbol of danger, defiance, or attitude, depending on the context. The double-headed eagle has existed in political and religious iconography for centuries. It originally appeared in the Byzantine Empire, where it symbolized the unity of church and state, each head facing east and west, representing spiritual and temporal authority. Later, it was adopted by the Holy Roman Empire, then by the Russian Empire, and eventually by Serbia and Albania. In each case, the symbol took on different connotations: imperial might, religious legitimacy, or national sovereignty. In more recent times, it's also been used by fraternal organizations like the Freemasons, and in some cases by far-right nationalist movements, particularly in Eastern Europe. Because it's been passed from empire to empire and repurposed by modern groups, the double-headed eagle carries multiple, often conflicting meanings. In some cases, it symbolizes heritage and unity, and others it's tied to authoritarianism and elite secrecy. The symbol's long journey through different ideologies makes its modern meaning harder to pin down, and more politically charged depending on the setting. The Trident, or Tryzub, which literally means 3 teeth, is the national symbol of Ukraine, officially adopted in 1992, but with roots that go back over 1,000 years. It appeared on coins used by the medieval ruler Volodymyr the Great and has historically represented Ukrainian sovereignty, cultural identity, and the legacy of Kievan Rus. In recent years, however, the trident has also been used by Ukrainian paramilitary and far-right nationalist groups, especially during and after the 2014 conflict with Russia. Units like the Azov Battalion, which have been criticized for harboring extremist elements, have incorporated the symbol into their branding. This dual usage creates tension around the trident's meaning. For most Ukrainians, it's still a patriotic emblem, but for others, especially critics abroad, its appearance in paramilitary contexts has raised concerns about symbolism and intent. While not a full hijack, its use by ideologically charged groups has introduced a layer of controversy to a symbol that was once viewed as purely national and historical. Thor's hammer, or Mjölnir, is a sacred symbol from Norse mythology. It represents the hammer wielded by Thor, the god of thunder, and has stood for strength, protection, and divine power to uphold order. The ancient Germanic tribes used it in religious ceremonies, and it's still an important symbol in modern heathen and Norse pagan traditions. But then, as we've seen before with other symbols, some unsavory groups adopted the symbol. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the hammer was adopted by white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups, particularly in Europe and North America. They used it as a cultural marker of white heritage, often stripping it of its religious context and reframing it as an ethnic identity symbol. This co-optation created a cultural conflict. Many modern pagans still wear or display the hammer as part of their faith, but its visibility among hate groups has led to misinterpretations and, in some cases, social pushback. More recently, the symbol has been adopted into the superhero world as a powerful weapon and identifier of who is truly worthy, whether it's the mighty Thor, Captain America, or even Thor's ex-girlfriend, Jane Foster. This is one of Germany's most recognizable military symbols. It survived 2 world wars, Nazi misuse, and a punk revival, and its meaning keeps changing, depending on who's wearing it. The Iron Cross began as a military decoration in Prussia, first awarded in 1813. It was later adopted by the German Empire and became one of the most recognizable medals for bravery in battle. It carried over into both world wars, retaining its status as a symbol of honor for German soldiers. The Nazi regime reused the Iron Cross during World War II, often pairing it with the swastika. After the war, the symbol became associated with Nazi militarism, although West Germany reintroduced a modified version for the modern Bundeswehr, removing the Nazi elements. In the post-war years, the Iron Cross was also picked up by biker gangs and elements of punk subculture. In those circles, it was mainly used for shock value and anti-authoritarian messaging, far out of step with its original military meaning. Today, it's still part of official German military insignia, but its use in fashion and subcultures has complicated its public perception, especially outside of Germany. The Omega symbol is the last letter of the Greek alphabet and has held various meanings over time. In early Christian texts, it was often paired with alpha to signify the beginning and the end, essentially referring to divine completeness. In scientific and mathematical contexts, it's used to denote units like electrical resistance or angular velocity. Outside of those theological or technical uses, the symbol has occasionally been adopted by fringe religious or apocalyptic groups. One example is the Heaven's Gate cult in the 1990s, which referenced the concept of Omega in their end times belief system. While not widely hijacked, the association of Omega with finality has made it appealing to groups focused on the idea of ending or spiritual transition. In niche corners of conspiracy culture, it's also appeared as part of symbolic mashups, especially online where symbols are often repurposed for aesthetic or coded meanings. The shift isn't widespread, but it's enough to give the Omega symbol a layered association that goes beyond its original spiritual or academic use. The same symbol that crowned Olympic champions was later used in fascist propaganda, and it still shows up on luxury branding today. The Laurel Wreath originated in ancient Greece and Rome, where it was used to honor achievement, both in athletic competition and public service. It was made from real laurel leaves and placed on the heads of victors at events like the Olympic Games, or worn by poets and generals as a mark of excellence. In the 20th century, this symbol of classic honor was reintroduced in different ideological settings. Most notably, fascist regimes in Italy and Spain incorporated the laurel wreath into their official iconography. It was used to signal continuity with the Roman Empire and to lend historical weight to modern authoritarian governments. Today, the laurel wreath still appears in academic ceremonies, Olympic branding, and luxury fashion logos. But in some political contexts, especially in Europe, it can evoke a specific type of nationalist nostalgia. The most infamous image of Che Guevara, the one printed on posters, t-shirts, and coffee mugs, comes from a 1960 photograph taken by Cuban photographer Alberto Corda. Originally, the photo was captured at a funeral for victims of a ship explosion and wasn't widely published until after Che's passing. It then became iconic during the global wave of student protest movements in the late 1960s. The hijack came later, when the image was turned into a commercial product. It began appearing on clothes, posters, and merchandise, often sold in the kinds of capitalist markets Che fought to dismantle. The symbol of Marxist revolution was now generating profit for Western brands. That's the contradiction. Che's image became a tool of the system he opposed, used by people who often don't know or don't care about the actual violence and authoritarian aspects of his politics. What began as a radical symbol was repackaged into a feel-good brand. Is the red poppy a tribute to fallen soldiers or a political loyalty test? And why does that question still divide people? The red poppy became a symbol of remembrance after World War I, inspired by the 1915 poem In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. Veterans and civilians began wearing it to honor those who had lost their lives in military service, especially in the UK and Commonwealth countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But over the years, the red poppy's meaning has expanded, and in some cases shifted. In the UK, some critics argue that the poppy has been used to promote a sanitized or overly patriotic view of war. There are also complaints that public pressure to wear it, especially among public figures, has turned it into a test of loyalty rather than a voluntary act of remembrance. Some anti-war groups have introduced the white poppy as an alternative, emphasizing peace and the human cost of conflict. That response reflects ongoing debates about what the red poppy truly represents: respect for sacrifice or endorsement of military policy. Its original purpose hasn't disappeared, but its political overtones are harder to ignore in modern use. How did a gesture for "everything's fine" become a hate symbol? And was it really as widely used as some people claimed? The OK hand gesture, thumb and finger forming a circle with the other fingers extended, has been a globally understood sign for OK, yes, or general approval for well over a century. It's commonly used in both casual conversation and visual shorthand, and even in emojis. In 2017, a coordinated online campaign began on image boards like 4chan to falsely frame the gesture as a white power symbol. Initially intended as a hoax to provoke media reaction, the gesture was eventually adopted by actual extremist individuals and groups. In a few high-profile cases, it was even flashed during court appearances by those charged with hate crimes. The Anti-Defamation League added the gesture to its hate symbol database, but with a clear note: context matters. It's a rare case where a joke and a hoax were taken seriously by those against it, then adopted by some who supported it, which then fueled the case against it. Round and round and round. The ambiguity made it a source of confusion or debate, especially when seen in public or media without context. But the truth is that the OK sign is still used primarily in its original innocent meaning. So, it's okay. Thank you for watching the video and making it all the way to the end. You know, symbols are like a form of language, and they do evolve over time. And it's interesting to see how symbols change over time by the different groups or individuals that use them. In fact, it's probably impossible for a popular symbol to not be hijacked over a long period of time. But what do you think? Did we miss any? Were we wrong about any of these? Which hijacking do you think is the most egregious? Let us know in the comments. And if you're still around, leave us a like and subscribe. And there should be another video on your screen right now about symbols or marks or something. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.